In order to make this meteorite appear like it's behind these trees, let's see if we can key out this blue and basically put this behind here. So to do this, we need to make a canvas here with a rectangle, and then make a texture where we only show the grass and the trees, but all the sky is cut out. So let's make a canvas. We'll do this inside of the focal distance up here. And then in here, we'll add a rectangle. And for the rectangle dimensions, we'll make it full width and full height. And add a material, create new material, jump in here, and we'll change this to matte foreground. And change the type to flat. And now eventually we're going to use patches to add this texture. So let's just add this now. And we need the camera texture, which I don't think we've created yet. So we'll just go to Camera, Texture Extractions, and add that. And then pull that right in. So we now have the camera texture, and when it's plugged into here, we have it applied to this rectangle. But now we need to cut out all this blue sky. So as we talked about before, if we break up the RGBA, we can pull out the blue channel. So let's do that by unpacking. Change it to vector 4. And this Z will be the blue channel. And let's just see what it looks like. So you can see the blue part here is the brightest in the scene, and everything else is a lot darker. So now we need to affect this to try to make it a black and white image, where the black will be cut out and the white will be visible. So first, let's try multiplying this. And just tap the up arrow to increase this. So you can see just by multiplying by 2, the sky is completely white, but we get a little bit of the grass showing through. So let's add an add patch. Plug that in and see if we can pull some of this back. So see, once you get to negative 0.6, the clouds start coming back. So it looks like multiplying by 2 and then subtracting 0.5 gets a really nice clean image here where all of the sky is totally knocked out. But this isn't working yet because we still have this solid image and can't see anything behind it. You can see through this because this part right here is just the camera view, and the actual rectangle is only this big. So that's why you're seeing a little bit on the bottom there. So we need to take this information and use it as an alpha. So let's pull these down and then pack all this together. It'll be a vector 4, and we'll use this information as the alpha, and then the R, G, and B will be straight across, because we want the colors to be the same. So as you can see, we still can't see anything through this texture. So what's going on? Let's look at the material first to see if we can see anything. So it's set to alpha, which is correct. And let's turn on alpha test to see if anything happens. Okay, so now we can see something. So now you can see the meteorite is visible through the dark parts of the image, but with the sky, it's totally opaque still. So we essentially need to flip these two. So let's try adjusting these values. Instead of multiplying by positive 2, let's multiply by negative 2. And then instead of subtracting, let's see if we increase this, if anything will change. All right, now we're getting somewhere. As you can see in the viewport, when the meteorite is behind the grass and the trees, we don't see it. But up in the sky, it's totally visible. And to better illustrate this over here, I'm just going to hide this text for now. And then in the meteorite and in the particles, I'm just going to drag this up so it's a little bit higher off the ground. Now you can see over here it's visible. So if we hit play, now we can see this massive meteorite is stuck in the air but crashing down behind all these trees. That's because we're using the blue channel multiplied by a negative number to invert it, and then we're adding 1 to bring it back into a positive value. and then we're using that information as the alpha channel. But the R, G, and B are still maintained because we're pulling those directly from the camera texture. So this works great for this scene, but what if the sky isn't as bright, or it's even brighter, or the foreground's a different color, and so the difference between the blue sky and the rest of the scene isn't as big? So we want a way to be able to shift this depending on the user's environment. So we're going to add a slider UI so you can manually adjust where this masking takes place. So let's right click and add a slider UI. And you'll see here it says unsupported by Facebook. So we can't create this until we disable Facebook and just have Instagram enabled for now. And it says you're using a capability that is not supported by your target platforms. That's the dynamic text over here, and that's fine because we're just testing this out. So let's add the slider UI for real this time. Make it visible. Start value is 0. We'll just stick with that for now. And let's try adding it directly into this add value. So the slider UI doesn't appear in this window, so we need to send it to our device to test that. And before I was able to test on my Instagram camera, I deleted the text that we were using with the dynamic text, because with Instagram enabled, I wasn't able to test with that on. So I just did that while I was paused really quick. And then after testing on my device, this value between 0 and 1 was too low because this add value we had set to 1. So let's take this value and add 0.5 to it. So we start a little bit higher. Actually, we can just change the start value to 0.5. That would make a lot more sense. And now I'm going to go and test on Instagram and see if that's better. After testing this again, the slider wasn't outputting a high enough value. So let's still start with 0.5, but add a multiply here. And then we'll multiply by 3. And maybe let's start back at 0. So now this slider goes from 0 to 3 instead of 0 to 1. So that should be enough to push all of this as far as we need to go. So I'm going to test this again and see how it works. The values of 0 for the slider UI start value and 3 for the multiply worked really well. But I did have to switch these back to, under the acceleration, a positive 1.5 in the Z instead of the Y. Because for some reason, even though it's pushing down in this viewport, when I test it on my device, it's pointing up like normal. And we went over this earlier, but that's why it's pointing down again, because I had to switch these over real quick. But now it works. Using the slider on the right side of the screen, I can push and pull the meteorite forward and backward using the blue channel as an alpha mask.